I know from years of my own research and the research of others that proofs of the Holocaust are few. Literally, all there is are the eyewitness testimonies and post-war confessions. There is no picture, plan, or wartime document dealing with homicidal gas chambers or a plan to exterminate the Jews. And we can't use the excuse that the Nazis destroyed all the evidence, because after we had broken the German code, we were able to intercept their secret transmissions, including those that came from Auschwitz. The key to understanding the Holocaust story is understanding the true nature of the things passed off as proofs. Everything that is used as evidence of the Holocaust also can be said to have a perfectly normal explanation. For example, these exhibits are said to be the material proofs of exterminations. There's the piles of human hair. But what does that prove? It's acknowledged that each inmate had his or her head shaved because of the lice problem. That's not denied, so why wouldn't there be piles of human hair? What about the piles of shoes and clothing? Is that a proof? It's a fact that the prisoners were issued a uniform upon arrival, including shoes. So why wouldn't there be piles of inmates' shoes and clothing? It doesn't prove anybody was killed. What about the canisters of gas? No one denies that Zyklon B was used to disinfect clothes and also buildings. Zyklon B was one of the premier pest control agents in Europe at that time. It was present in most of the concentration camps, including those that are not said to have had homicidal gas chambers in them. The typhus epidemic that spread throughout Europe during the war, and also spread through the camps, called for stringent lice control procedures. So what other proofs are offered? Well, there's the usual pictures of sick inmates, which proves the groundbreaking thesis that people got sick in the camp. Once again, I'll add that nobody denies the typhus epidemic, which resulted in many deaths. Then there's the artwork and the pictures of children, but at this point it's looking pretty bad for somebody looking for objective proofs of the gas chamber. And some of the proofs they present actually work against the concept. For example, they have one of several aerial photographs taken of Auschwitz by the Allies during the war. They don't mention, however, that when blown up, these photos don't show people being gassed or bodies being burned, even though they were taken during the time killings were said to be going on almost non-stop. Once inside, we can see why revisionists have had such a field day with this building. Obvious marks on the walls and floors, where apparently walls had been knocked down. Equally obvious holes in the floor where bathroom facilities had been. We maintain that, unlike the large hollow chamber we now see, this room had once been 5 rooms, including a bathroom. Yet the building does have what appears to be evidence of criminal usage. 4 holes in the ceiling, which lead to the roof, where 4 little chimneys stand. It is said that through these 4 holes, Zyklon B crystals were dropped. And indeed, there seems to be no other explanation for them. Do these holes prove homicidal gassings? Revisionists have claimed in the past that these holes were added after the camp's liberation, and that the inside walls were knocked down and the bathroom facilities removed to make the room look like a big gas chamber. Let's start again talking about this building here. This
gas chamber.
But this is a reconstruction.
It is in original state.
Original
state.
the ceiling?
It is in original part. Original.
It is original.
Original in through this chimney was dropped Zyklon B.
Are those the original holes in the ceiling?
No.
They've been rebuilt?
Yes,
Okay. After the war?
after the war, yes.
This is Auschwitz-Birkenau in an Allied aerial photo from September 1944. the train that would come up carrying the doomed inmates. You would have thousands of inmates being marched off the trains into one of these two gas chambers in full view of the entire camp. This was a spectacle that nobody at the camp could miss. They would see thousands of people marching into those buildings and nobody coming out. These were gas chambers that were not isolated from anyone, and indeed, when these aerial photographs were released in the late 70s, they contradicted many supposed eyewitness claims about how the Nazis had tried to camouflage the gas chambers at Birkenau. Another question that should be asked: is there any Zyklon B residue in the gas chamber, knowing that cyanide gas would in fact leave a residue? In 1988, execution equipment expert Fred Lucher conducted forensic examinations on the gas chambers at Auschwitz. To answer that question, he took samples from the 4 gas chambers at Birkenau, the one at the main camp, and a control sample from one of the disinfestation chambers that we know did use Zyklon B. Now, the gas chamber samples showed almost no appreciable traces, whereas the disinfestation sample literally went right off the scale. In 1990, the Institute of Forensic Research in Krakow decided to conduct their own forensic tests to see if they could refute Fred Lucher's findings, and their own tests got back the same results.
I told Mr. Zundel and his defense team prior to my going that if I did in fact find facilities that could have supported executions, not only whether they did support the executions, but only whether or not they could have sustained gas executions, I would make that very clear in my report, and that is what I would testify to when I testified in court.
What, aside from the samples, convinced you that these facilities could not have been used then or now as execution facilities?
You must have gasketed doors, no windows, means of getting the gas in, means of getting the gas out. If those persons operating the facilities didn't gas themselves to death at the same time that the executees died, they certainly would have been blown to bits when the gas exploded from a switch, the heat of a light bulb, or the gas approaching and getting into the crematory furnace. We're talking about brick and mortar buildings without heat, with non-explosion proof lighting, without gasketed doors, in some cases without doors at all, and with crematories that opened very close or adjacent to the facility. I mean, it's just ludicrous to consider that these facilities could have been used as gas chambers. There was no such a thing as an eyewitness. I have never seen a report that was written by anyone who had a valid description of what could have happened at a gassing. So the long and the short of it is, there are no eyewitnesses because there were no gassings.
I think it's necessary to put this matter in its proper historical perspective. You see, we live in a time now when the old Soviet Union has fallen apart, and it's now okay for both liberals and conservatives, as well as everybody else, to speak ill of the departed communist state. But it was not always that way. During World War II, the Soviets were more than just a military ally. Their anti-Nazi propaganda was readily accepted by the other allies because it served all of their purposes. The point is that as the victors, the Soviets got to commit their propaganda to the history books as fact. With the 2020 hindsight we now have, the knowledge of Stalin's despotism and the KGB's history of misinformation and deception, as well as the other camps in Poland, Majdanek, Belzec, Chełmno, Treblinka, and Sobibor, we've had to rely on the Soviets for most of our information.
Krakau liegt vor einem polnischen Gerichtshof der Prozess gegen die Hauptverantwortlichen für das Konzentrationslager Auschwitz zu Ende. Insgesamt kamen nahezu 300.000 Menschen verschiedenster Nationen im Konzentrationslager Auschwitz.
That is not true. But I don't think 6 million Jews were gassed. Now, be careful. I beg of you, this is against the law in Germany. If there was a German, somebody of the German state, you could have me thrown into prison before I leave Germany. I hope that's not your intention.